Are AI books a scam? Let's talk about it. I've come across quite a few videos on YouTube where the content is talking about how you can write a book with AI and package it together, market it, and sell it on a platform like Amazon. And I want to share my perspective, having encountered a few of these AI generated books. If you don't know who I am, my name's Andrea, the word engineer, a former engineer turned freelance book editor living in Mexico. I help aspiring authors and entrepreneurs, solopreneurs write, edit, and market their books. So let me talk about a little bit of how I started my career as a freelancer. So as a freelancer, when you're first starting out, it can be challenging to get that very first client, right? So there are third-party platforms where it matches a freelancer like myself to someone who needs the service that I provide, i.e., a client, right? So services like this include Upwork, Fiverr, and I believe LinkedIn has a freelancer marketplace as well, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken. Um, so when I first started my career, I utilized a platform called Fiverr. And with a platform like that, it can sometimes come with a negative connotation because when Fiverr was first started, like it was kind of marketed as a marketplace that people could use, business owners, solopreneurs, to get cheap services, to get services done at a very cheap rate, starting at $5 a gig, right? Hence the name Fiverr. But over time, it's um, it's attracted a lot more professionals, I feel, more people with a bit more experience in whatever service they're offering, and people are making a way of life using the platform Fiverr. Like myself, I've been able to support myself with most of my clients being off of a platform like Fiverr. And I've even heard of some freelancers on the platform who have made like six figures in 1 year. Um, I have never done that myself, um, but I've heard of people who have. So it's more than just what the service used to be when it was first created, when you could just get really, really cheap services, right? So with being on a platform like Fiverr, I've encountered, I would categorize them into four types of clients. So my first group of clients I would consider newer authors. They've never written a book before. They're not really sure how it's supposed to be structured. They're not sure how they're even going to market it. They're just super brand new to the process. So I would say that would be a good portion of my clients. I would say are new fiction authors. And so my second group of clients, I would consider my more experienced fiction authors. So maybe they've written a book before, or many books before, or maybe they have a degree in writing or creative writing, or they've taken a lot of courses, so they just have a bit more experience and know all the elements that it takes to write a good story and sell it, whether they're doing and they know what it takes to write a good story, and they kind of have an idea of whether they're trying to go more of a traditional route or if they're trying to publish their book indie, self-publish. um, and then my third group of clients would be my nonfiction authors. So these are more so entrepreneurs, experts in whatever industry or field they're in, um, memoirists. I've had a few people write memoirs. So these are people who they know what the content that they're putting in their book, they know it inside and out. Like they have a lot of experience, or maybe they have a business and they're trying to they're trying to teach others how to create that same business, something along those lines, right? And then my fourth types of clients I would consider, because of AI and how popular it's gotten and how easy it is to access it, I guess now, I have received a small portion of books that have been generated with AI, either generated solely with AI or books that have been AI assisted, right? So A book, I would consider a book that's generated by AI is that the all of the content is completely derived or created from ChatGPT or whatever AI service that you're using, right? And the whole entire book is like this. The chapter titles, the structure of it, all the content is solely generated with AI. And then the other type of book is like AI assisted, where like some of my clients have maybe they did voice to text, like on Google Docs. You can do you can use your speaker and you could talk, and then the document just computes whatever you're saying into written words, right? And so sometimes people would use that technique, do the voice to text, and then they'll run it through ChatGPT or some type of AI service to make the sentences more cohesive and much more readable, right? So the difference between AI generated and AI assisted is AI generated is completely solely content that was created and generated from AI, and AI assisted is the content is the work of the author. It's their own words. It's just not, it's their own words, it's their own knowledge that they're sharing in the content, but they used a service like ChatGPT to make it more coherent, to make it sound better, to make it more readable. So those would be the two variations of books that I have received in my fourth category of authors. So my focus, when I asked the question, are AI books a scam? It's more so geared to AI generated books and not AI assisted books, because there's a slight difference between the two, right? Um, so here's my thing with AI generated books. The issue that I encounter with those books is that one, they lack a lot of depth. Like a lot of the content is very surface level, and it makes me feel like the author of this AI generated book, may not be an expert in the field. So you're trying to produce a book, but you don't really have a lot of knowledge or experience or expertise in this, but you're then trying to sell this content in a book and have people buy it. So that's one issue I have with it. Another issue I have with these type of books is that it produces a lot of redundant information. So, for example, recently I had a client whose book was generated with AI, and another thing with AI is like it starts every chapter with like, in this chapter we're going to talk about such and such and such, right? And so it goes on to list three different sentences about what this chapter is going to be about, right? So that would be like the first paragraph, and then maybe on the very next page or two paragraphs down, those same three sentences are then repeated in another paragraph, just paraphrase, right? So when you repeat the same information after having just said it, maybe on the previous page or two paragraphs ago, that would be considered redundant information. And having a lot of redundant info inside your book makes it makes the book less engaging and maybe a bit dull. So having redundant information in your book is typically not recommended. You want to it kind of slows the pace because the reader's like, wait, didn't you just say that? Why are you repeating yourself again? So it's one of those things that you want to take out of your book. And then the third thing I noticed with these types of AI generated books is that they really only use like three to four sentence structures. And so these four sentence structures are just repeated over and over in each paragraph. And that is also a form of repetition. Like typically when writers write, when authors actually write, they don't generally repeat themselves structurally or sentence wise. And if they do, that's something an editor will point out to them and be like, hey, maybe switch up how you're writing their sentences, because that's a form of redundancy, and you want to keep the reader engaged. You don't want to keep things too repetitious. Like you don't want to keep things too repetitious like that in writing. So that's the third issue I've come across with these types of books is that it's a lack of variation in sentence structures, which to me makes for kind of a boring, dull read, in my opinion. And then the fourth issue that I have that I've come across recently with a client's book is the references section. So in this particular situation, it was clear to me that the references had been generated with AI as well, because as part of my job as a copy editor, I always check the references to make sure if there are website links that the links are working properly. And then I also check the information in the particular article to make sure that the information in the article correlates to whatever the source is in the actual book so that, there's no discrepancies there, right? Um, so that's a part of what I do as a copy editor. So when I was checking this particular client's references, half of the links didn't work, which shows me that the client didn't actually check the references. Um, and then the references that were listed that did work, they weren't really from reputable sources. They weren't well-known sources. And typically when you want to cite something, you want to use a trustworthy source. And the sources that this particular person used, I wouldn't consider to be trustworthy. And the third issue was that when I actually like skimmed through the actual article, um, the content in the article had nothing to do with what was in the actual book. So it's like you're you're not even checking the references. You're not even really reading these books that you're creating with AI, but then you want to package it up in the form of a book and then sell it to people, right? But you're not even reading the book that you're trying to sell. You're not even checking to see if what the AI is generating is even accurate, is correct, or if it's even making sense. So this is the issue that I have with these AI generated books is that the people who are creating them, they're not really putting any effort or thought or consideration into the book, right? They're just trying to make a quick buck. They're just trying to make some money or trying to make some fast money or easy money. But the quality of these books are not good, right? And I love the self-help genre. Like in my early like 20s to 30s, like I literally only read nonfiction books, and it just hurts my heart when I see these AI generated books because they just do not compare to. So some of the books I read was like Think and Grow Rich was real popular, Rich Dad Poor Dad, How to Influence and Influence People, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Quiet, which is like a book on being an introvert in like a very noisy world. So like I love the self-help nonfiction genre. So when I come across these AI generated books, it's just like they're not they're not in the same category. They're not giving you the same quality. They're not giving you the same depth of information. It's just such my heart when I read these books because they're just so they're not good. They're just not good. And it makes me think of y'all remember that movie Malibu's Most Wanted where I think it came out back in the early 2000s and it had the main character, I think his name was Brad, but they called him B-Rad. Um he lived in Malibu, of course, but and he and his friends and he and his friends were trying to emulate the lifestyle of like a gangster rapper because they had a desire to have a rap career. And so it was just and so it's so basically it's just like these white kids or these rich kids like trying to emulate what it's like to be a rapper who happens to be black, right? Um, so that's kind of how I view these AI generated books. They're like the Malibu's most wanted of like the self-publishing books. They're like cosplaying, they're like cosplaying being an actual book. You know what I'm saying? Because just the quality and the level of content that's in it just doesn't compare. It doesn't compare. And speaking of cosplaying, I did a video back in 2024 about this Canadian author who happens to be white. He decided to come to the United States, dress up into a form of a black man. So he had on like black face paint, and he had like a wig, I think like an afro, and he went around America to see how black people encounter racism within the country. And so it's like, why would you do that? Like you could just ask, black people who live in the United States what their experience is with racism. You don't have to cosplay being a black person to do that, right? But that's what these books feel like. These books definitely feel like they're cosplaying being actual books. So I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about these AI books? Are AI books a scam? Yes or no? And I'm curious about the readers, because ultimately I feel like if AI generated books actually have a chance in the publishing world, I don't know if they'll ever be accepted in like the traditional publishing world. I don't know if that they ever will be accepted in that world because it's very, very different. But maybe just for like print on demand type of self-publishing books. I'm curious if consumers, the readers, would be interested in even consuming books that aren't written by humans. Is that something readers even want? Would the readers be interested in buying books that aren't written by humans, that's solely generated with AI? Because ultimately that would be the determining factor on if they have a chance in the self-publishing world or not, I feel. So drop it in the comments as a reader. How do you feel about books generated by AI? Do you think they're a scam? Have you ever read any AI books or books that you think were generated by AI? What was it like? Um, yeah, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. If you've made it to the end of the video, make sure you like the video, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. And I'll link that video about the cosplaying author at the end of the video. So I'll see you on the next one.